So we'll call to order the November meeting of the Coastal Advisory Commission on Coastal Waters, Darien. And let's see, we're missing Tom, our clerk at the moment. What he would usually do at this point is say who's going to take notes. And I don't really know who's up. Jim, did you do it last time?
Yeah, I did it last time, but I don't mind doing it again.
No, I wasn't singling you out for that. Usually it's alphabetic, and if he was following that rule, it would next be Flip, I believe. Flip, does it sound like it's your turn?
Okay. Yep.
I always love to hear people to say the okay. That's the level of reluctance you hear. but you were a medium on that.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you, Flip. Appreciate it. So let's see. Called meeting to order, and I believe Tom sent around minutes last time. Did everyone have a chance to receive those and take a quick look?
Yep.
Good.
So do we have somebody to nominate or vote rather to approve them?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Second, and all approve, say aye.
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 Clear majority there, so minutes are approved. Thank you. Jim, I think you did the notes on those. Thank you. That was quite thorough.
Good, thanks.
And I'll launch right into my report, which really takes us to the meat of the matter. I don't think, unless you all have a lot of other things, the only thing I have that's real substantive here is the letter on the dock application, which is, I think, engendered a lot of conversations in the last discussion in the last couple of meetings, which has been great. So this is what I produced as a draft, and 3 or 4 of you were really helpful giving comments on it, which I incorporated. And this is the result. And I think this is, be something new for our commission and a new subject matter. And I think it's pretty important that we all have a look at this and exchange our views on it and decide as a whole what we'd like to do, send it on, or in what form send it on. So I don't know, maybe I just open the floor if people had, admitting Tom Bell again, hold on, or that's Tom Lochtefeld. No, it's Tom
Not me. No, I'm online.
Huh, I had another. That's funny. I just admitted you again. I don't understand.
Okay.
I have 2 Tom Bells. There you are.
Okay. I'll get rid of one.
Yeah. You feeling?
No, my PC crashed.
Oh, so you were playing it twice. Okay.
Yes.
The complex strategy you're playing there. Here we go. Anyway, I think they'll open the floor here to comments, questions on the draft. It's not that short. It tries to grab all the comments that were made in our last couple calls. Hopefully it does so accurately, but glad for everybody's thoughts on it.
I think it looks good, Bill. I think I would encourage all of us to finalize it tonight so we can get it out.
Yep.
It's certainly something we've all felt strongly about. I can lead a couple questions on it. So I pulled out the specific comments I thought you all were making, and those are the bullet points, the specific objections. Do any of those, are they too light, go too far, inaccurate, or miss out on something? Do you think they cover the spectrum?
They covered it well.
Yeah. I don't have a problem with what you drafted.
Tom, there was an interesting one, as far as you go, that I use the term navigable waters. Let's see, likely to constrict navigability of the channel waters for multiple boaters and paddlers. That's the top bullet on the second page. I'm not asking for the harbor master's opinion nor an ex-harbor master's opinion, but did you think that that bullet was sort of fair in its maybe layman's use of the word navigability?
Yes,
Yeah, I think it's important to not use the term navigable waters, because I don't think that is actually, from a Coast Guard point of view, navigable waters.
no, but it is under the purview of the harbor master, state harbor master.
I was trying to be a little less formal about it, as Flip is stating, and also feeling I lack the expertise to bump into that too strongly. But as a boater and understanding that channel, I meant that comment, and I thought it reflected reality. So the second paragraph has some bold sentences, which is really, the strong statement that we're outright rejecting the application. That's not put in a light manner like, hey, can you change this? We say no. So I just want everyone to understand. I think that's where we were all coming out. It didn't seem to me we were taking any in-between position. We were saying this one doesn't work.
Like it, I agree with it.
And then I
No,
guess
I mean,
another-
if we look at the last paragraph, you say that you're outright rejecting the applicant's proposed dock permit with the design as presented. But then you're giving him two options, or are you asking us to come up with to ratify version 1 or version 2?
sorry, coughing fit.
That's all right.
Well, that was what I was going to get to. I think that is the biggest question here is, and Jim pointed it out quite well in some of his comments back to me. We're rejecting what they're putting in place. Are we giving them some guidance though on what we might accept? I mean, there's sort of, if you go to the end paragraph, I've put in two sort of polar opposites. Well, the spectrum of maybe where we would come out, and one is we urge them just to consider a shorter length, and that leaves it for them to come back and we could opine on what comes back. And the other is to be more extremist and say, hey, you should go with a general permit, which we know is the shorter length of 4 feet or 40 feet, 4 feet below mean low water, or 40 feet of length. I think that puts the dock on dry land in the floating dock on dry land.
I think they should go with the general permit, frankly. I don't see a reason to give them an exception in such a sensitive area. And I think, as we point out elsewhere, the precedential value, there's a lot of precedent in this whole application.
Yeah.
The fact that they have this common piece of shoreline property and that they somehow think that gives them 4 docks and that's their starting negotiating point. I mean, you can see how a lot of people could abuse that precedent.
What concerns me about if we were to vary from the general permit, we're kind of in uncharted waters. In other words, here you have a general permit that says you can go the shorter of 40 feet from the high water mark or to 4 feet depth mean low water, whichever is shorter. Now, if you throw out one of those things, one of those constraints, and you say, okay, well, we're not going to really hold you accountable to 40 feet from the high water mark. Well, where does it end? One note I sent to Bill was, think about Holly Pond. That whole thing is less than 4 feet of depth at mean low water. if everyone was allowed to throw out the 40-foot from the high water mark as a constraint, they could build piers crossing the entire pond. You never get to 4 feet water. You can't just go infinitely.
That's the same thing in Goodwise right here where this dock is. From that point, or actually farther south, but that area all the way north to the dam, there's not 4 feet of water at low tide.
Yeah. So it almost seems as though if you throw out those 2 constraints on the general permit, you're now writing rules off a blank sheet of paper. You know, the idea of going all the way out to 4 feet of mean low water, just
The other side of the pond, other side of the waterway.
yeah. I mean, at some point, it gets you to the other side of the waterway,
I was gonna put another bridge in there so they can take their cars across.
right?
It is interesting, doing that, putting that clause in there, though, does say that people, that we're saying people who want new docks in Goodwives River, most of them will be sitting on the mud at low tide.
That is the current fact pattern.
Yeah, you can see it on the mooring chains that go east-west. Certainly on the ones that are on the western side of the channel. That the former Harbormaster was put those in, allowing the boaters to use those as long as they knew what they were getting into. But and at you know, a regular low tide, most of the boats on the east, on the western chain, couldn't get through their boats.
Yeah, it's interesting. What they've done now is totally arbitrary. They went out to, what is it, 2 feet, I think, of water depth above mean low water. We point out in one of these bullets that they could choose another starting point on the shore and go to a different mean low water mark with their fixed pier and get near that same depth at only 70 feet of fixed pier, half the length. But that's arbitrary. You know, it's sort of like we're just trying to point out some illogic of the arbitrariness of their move, but then we don't necessarily set a rational standard either by noting that.
But as Jim points out, that's what the general permit is, you know, designed to do, give you a rule.
I mean, I concur. I think it would be great to just say, when we're in the confines of our rivers, general permit.
I don't know what basis you could make another suggestion on. I mean, you only got one rule out there, and it's defined. There's no alternate rule that we're aware of, I think.
Which is the zone they're in with the, what's it, structures, landfills, and forgetting structures, dredging, and fill. That's sort of an open-ended thing which demands a public hearing and all sorts of discussion back and forth. And so they're in that zone of everything's customized. And I do think that seems like a difficult way to run the business.
Again, you get into the precedent. Every homeowner is going to want to go down that customized path. You'll be negotiating a half dozen of these things a year.
Until you run out of space.
Right.
It is interesting to note, when we first started coming at this, we all felt that we didn't have any expertise to approach it. And, you know, I still think we're not much different, right? We're not planning and zoning waterward guys. We just don't have a lot of experience of that. But at this point we are, and I agree, I like people's thoughts on this and their thinking, and I've liked the process on this. We are coming up with a standard which is a real stake in the ground. I just want to point that out. We're not wading into this. We're taking a stance. Well, I mean, I think the only person I think who had some issue with this, and I'm not singling you out, Grant, was yourself, Grant. Have you, how do you feel about it after having read the letter and the points?
Sorry, I'm unmuting. I think in this particular instance, the dock or the pier rather protrudes far enough out that it, as it said, it sort of affects navigable water or that narrow path of water back there. I do still feel conflicted on it being our place or our right to tell a property owner what they can do with access to their property. In this instance, it does seem that this impacts more of the public right of way, I guess, through the water than it does if it were 30 feet, right? It would just be another dock. I wouldn't really have a problem with each of those parcels of property having their own dock, even, because that's their right? If they're waterfront property, they should be able to have that option if it doesn't impact others greatly. I guess the argument here is that this impacts others greatly, correct?
And disturbs the underlying clam and oyster beds and the vegetation.
Fantastic point. Yep. So I agree that it disturbs more of the public right of way than it probably should. But if it doesn't fall within the rules that are set forth by the DEP and the printed rules that are there, I think there's a right to say this is a problem. But if it were to fall within the parameters, I'm not sure that I believe that it's our place to object to people putting docks off of their property.
Yeah. And again, just remember, this is not town property or resident property. This is state property.
Wait, that's state property, Tom?
Yes.
The bottom.
No, the navigable waters are controlled by the state, not the town.
Oh, sorry. Okay, sorry. I thought you meant the piece of property the dock was on. Yes, correct.
No.
Yep.
So the town may not have a lot to say about this. We're going to send this up to deep, right?
Well, yeah, in terms of process, so Flip was down with myself and Jamie and the past selectman and Jeremy Ginsburg, and we had a good audience. They were entertaining of the arguments, and I don't know, Flip, I thought by the end of our 45 minutes with them, they basically were sounding like they agreed. Whether or not they thought they could do something about it was another question, but I thought we had sympathetic ears.
Were you down with them on the waterfront?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, nice.
Yeah.
I didn't know if you meant town or waterfront rather.
Yeah, sorry, waterfront. They both nicely. Jamie, in her last couple of days of administration, came down. Very helpful. But as we both recognized, the Coastal Commission reports to the Board of Selectmen. It doesn't have a right to, circumvent that and cause trouble for people in town by going straight to the state permitting authority and stirring up trouble. That's not our authority line or business. But Jamie agreed and Jeremy Ginsburg agreed that they would both receive a letter from us and in spirit they were game to forward it on to CT Deep. Like they did an earlier resident in town had made a substantial complaint via email to them, and they forwarded it on to CT Deep with regard to this dock application. So they demonstrated that they do that again with this letter. So I thought that was great and probably the best we can hope for given our status as a advisory commission only. we have a wrinkle here in that we now have First Selectman McNally. She may or may not feel the same, but I think clearly Jeremy Ginsburg was on our side earlier, and I think our arguments are enunciated in this letter. And I will send it both to them and seek an audience with the First Selectman at that in the next week or so, and see if we can just have the same route that was earlier proposed.
Bill, could you clear me up on one thing? Right now, the status of this application, it's the application is made to Connecticut Deep. Is that correct?
Correct.
And at this point, have they made a ruling on this, saying that they're going to accept the 200-foot dock?
No, it's in a squishy zone. So there's been lots of backs and forth, three-party backs and forth between the applicant and Jeremy Ginsburg and CT Deep. And Jeremy Ginsburg traded length of dock as a compromise to the applicant giving up 4 docks. And that was something that CT Deep felt was a big win. But a couple of things weren't honored. One, I think in the first instance, the dock was greater than 4 feet wide. So CT Deep came back and said, hey, that's not right. That's got to be smaller. And another instance, there are 4 land parcels right against the waterfront. And those CT Deep demanded be combined into one so that nobody ever in the future would have a right to put 3 more docks on the rest of the parcels. And that hadn't been done either. So it's in this squishy zone of, hey, we chatted with you and I thought this was going to be done. And until that's done, we're not agreeing anything yet.
So, Bill, just to expand on the point you just made to make sure everybody has focused on it. One of the elements of this application to me that seems very aggressive is this whole four docks concept. There are 2 waterfront lots here, and there are 2 inland lots. Those 2 inland lots in every other normal situation would not have any claim on having a dock. What they have done is to take the little strip of hillside along the river and divide it into 4 pieces so that each of them can say they own a smidgen of waterfront property. And you can see how that is very abusive. You could equally, those are obviously not buildable lots. You could equally divide that into 1,000 lots and have everybody in town have the right to have a dock by this measure. So it is, at least in my mind, a very aggressive posture. This, to me, really is a 2 dock situation, not 4.
David, you're on mute.
How do they do that, Flip? I mean, aren't there minimum lot sizes presumably on
No,
in that area?
Well,
that would
they
preclude
have-
you from doing that?
there are not, I don't believe there are minimum lot sizes. There are obviously minimum buildable lots. But they have buildable, the uphill properties are buildable lots. They have each more than an acre. But then they have this little strip of land that they just divided up and then gave to each of the subdivided lots.
Okay,
But-
so if you want to build a house, you have to have a half an acre or more or something, or whatever it is in that
It's 1 acre
zone.
zoning, yeah.
But if I want to take a square yard of my property and sell it to you so that you can watch my
Yeah,
dog run
and
around on Saturday.
Abracadabra,
I can
you
do that.
become a waterfront property owner.
Okay.
To me, it feels like CT Deep was faced with a false negotiating position that, it was trading dock size for something that wasn't realistic for docks in one spot. So that it seems to me they caved on something that wasn't really something to be feared of.
I actually have a question for Flip, because obviously you live right nearby. The 2 subdivided lots that are going to be up the hill, realistically, is the address going to be Pear Tree Point Road or Long Neck Point Road? The access road is going to have to come from Long Neck Point, isn't it?
Yeah, yes.
So
I don't know what
right
the
now, the
address is,
dock
but something-
application, the dock application is for 4 numbers coming off Pear Tree Point Road. If the 2 lots uphill are Pear Tree Point Road,
Yeah,
it should be rejected.
sometimes people play games like that with addresses, and I
This
would
is
think,
the builder that's doing this. They're not existing homeowners.
well, it's not the builder, it's the existing owner who's not.
Oh.
Well, no, well, he's gonna develop them, yeah.
Okay.
But there's no other similarly situated house to the upland houses that
Mhm.
has waterfront access.
Different,
So-
different question. What happens to the people that have legitimate waterfront that are on the, would be what, the eastern side of Pear Tree Point Road? Do they get to put docks in? You know what I'm talking about? You're giving me kind of a funny look.
Yeah, I
but-
don't know if they, I don't know if they own land, the undeveloped land in front of, well, take, remember that dock application that we did, that you weighed in on at the, there was, Bo Malpass was building that house just right north of the boat club. And that is a similar situation where there's a house on the eastern side of Pear Tree Point Road, but they own the little strip of land that abuts the water, and they were able to put a dock in there.
Yeah, I drove down there today. I saw that dock.
But up more north towards the dam, I believe the town owns that strip of land on the, that goes up along the shore, not the property owners on the other side of the street.
Okay. Just trying to make sure we don't have to keep doing this.
But if this, I mean, the precedential value here is clear, which is if they get to put this dock in, what's to prevent anybody else upriver to put a long dock to say, oh, I need to get to deeper water?
Right,
For those who,
Extending their docks.
Yeah,
right. The people who have their docks sitting in the mud at low water.
yeah, which is 100% of the people above that.
It'll become a standard for reselling your house to upgrade that. Yeah.
yeah. Or the attraction that says, oh yeah, the town will give you a dock.
Right.
Well, we've had a lot of discussion on this for the last 2 meetings and now this. If you all think we've covered the corners of this, I would make a motion for us to vote to send the letter in to the first selectman and Jeremy Ginsburg as is, except for a revision to the last paragraph where I would choose version number 2, the general permit version, which would strengthen this to a higher level, and submit it that way. And I'll report back to you on what they see as a process, but hopefully the process is for them to submit it just as we've suggested here. Anyone want a second? Or maybe I can't make the motion. Does someone want to make the motion?
I'll make first or second, whatever you need.
I can't vote.
All right, so I'll make the motion to approve the letter with version number 2 in the final paragraph.
All in favor? And it looks all opposed. And Jim, did you vote? I just missed your hand.
Oh, I'm voting in favor. I thought making the
He
motion.
was making the motion.
Oh, is that,
Counts
oh,
as-
okay.
yeah.
My procedural stuff is low, sorry. Okay, sorry, so we took a tally there. So I think the motion passes. And so I will keep you guys informed on next steps with First Selectman McNally and Jeremy Ginsburg. And I'll do this in the week after Thanksgiving. That's great. So my only other item is our upcoming 2022. So let's see, I've from all but one of you, I haven't heard with regard to renominations, and everybody's re-upped, so that's great. Appreciate that. And I'll send those in unless the First Selectman has a new plan. Those all should go through. And then I wanted to talk about planning for 2022 and officers for 2022. And we've talked about this before. So we've been running on a pretty thin senior staff, myself acting as chair and Tom Lochtefeld acting as secretary. Tom has volunteered to go forward for another year as secretary, but I've suggested to him that he not do that because it's good to rotate secretaries. It's good to rotate everybody, frankly. He's going to step aside and be a normal commissioner. And then I still think it leaves us to fill the top slots. I'm willing to stay on as chair if you all will still have me. But I'd really love to have some vice chairs, either one or two, to help share some of the load. And I think a couple of the important things to do as a vice chairman are help get more speakers to our meetings. I just haven't had the ability to do that this year. And this next coming year, I'd really like us to have like half or more of our meetings having a speaker. I think that keeps new information coming in, and it's sort of important. And the other aspect, I think, is to help push along some projects. And having a couple of vice chairs would help do just that, I think. And we've got a strategic plan that we kicked up to the selectmen, and now the selectmen have changed, but I think it generally holds water. And the thought was to append to it some 1, 2, or 3 one-pagers for plans for actual things we would do in the upcoming year. And so we're at our year end for 21, and it would be good to have a little strategic planning and throw that in front of the group in our first January meeting in 2022. February is our first date, February. And have the group agree that here's some things we're going to do in the year, like another trash pickup, assorted things. So perhaps we'll do something with oysters this year, David, if you're feeling that may be coming along. Anyway, I think that's an important thing, and I think it all starts with filling out the top benches a little better. So I've reached out to a few of you, and there are some discussions going. I think at the end of the day, we really need at least one vice chairman, but it'd be great to have 2, spread some of the work. So 2 vice chairmen and a secretary. So we need to fill 3 slots, and I've got only at the moment 1 hand up. So I'm gonna keep up some of the phone calls. I guess I'll put it that way. And we really need some people to come forward here and trying to make it painless by having a couple vice chairmen rather than just 1. So expect more outreach from me. I think it would help to move 2022 forward a little more vigorously than 21 and even probably 20. The pandemic years have been a little, I think, too thin for perhaps all of us. And that light, I also wanted to talk about in-person meetings again. You know, we last did some polls in the summer. Without naming who those people are, we had 3 people say they didn't want to meet in person again, or never again, but while the pandemic was at a height. And I certainly respected that. And I certainly have felt that with the Delta variant, that as it was coming on, it was like no time to get back together. And I still think we don't quite know where we are yet, right? It's a confusing time, but I think we've really, as a commission, while we have kept going with things, I think, you know, the discussion suffers, the amount of action suffers, the excitement of getting together as a group suffers. And I personally, I'm voicing a personal view that it'd be nice to get together in 2022 if we could find a room, perhaps that's large enough at town hall, and go to our respective corners and take our masks off. I guess I would hope that we're all vaccinated, and that's sort of an honor system, but I guess that's a personal choice. But if you weren't vaccinated, you might keep your mask on, or if you just, are uncomfortable to keep your mask on, but you'd be okay with others sitting in a larger room with their masks off.
What's the policy in town hall? If I recall, there are signs outside, if you're not vaccinated, masks are mandatory.
Yeah,
Is that the case?
basically- Yeah, if you're not vaccinated, wear a mask. If you're vaccinated, you don't have to have a mask on. I think, when it comes down to a meeting in a room, like I personally wouldn't want to sit, was it 2000, room 213, the small one upstairs? I sort of personally wouldn't want to sit with people. It's nothing against you guys. It's just I've gotten nervous about that. But like sitting in the main selectmen's room or in the auditorium, I think there's plenty of 6 feet amongst people. I think we could have an okay meeting.
Where we used to meet, I think it was 119. There was a divider. Where there's a divider in the middle next to the fire marshal's office. That'd be more than fine, considering we're, I don't know, 10 people at most.
Or we could open the divider.
Right.
So I guess I'm expressing a preference for trying to make that happen.
The only problem with the auditorium, for instance, would, well, I guess you could record the sessions in any one of those rooms, right?
So I guess I'm inclined to make that happen. I don't feel like it's worth taking a vote. First of all, we don't have everybody on. At this point, I'm sort of personally feeling that even if we have 1 or 2 people who don't want to do it, that perhaps we just figure out a hybrid system for involving them. And that would be less harmful to the group as a whole than not meeting for another year or 9 months or to that extent. I don't mean for anyone to have to talk about their personal situation, but just on a general level, do you guys think that is a okay thing to try to pursue and come back with you on with regard to our 2022 plans?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I mean, we as a boat club have been meeting in person since the middle of like October, we started in person. So
Where do you do that, Tom?
we go to the Piedmont in the basement, or actually we've been doing it upstairs in the main lobby, in the main hall, when it's not being used, and most of the time it hasn't been being used. So.
And are you maskless?
It's preference at that particular point in time. They set up tables for us, and when we're on the main floor, and we are maskless then. And the Piedmont, we pay the Piedmont for the privilege of that, which would be, I don't think this committee could do that.
Right, right.
But as somebody said, 119 would be perfect for this group. And
you may have trouble getting it reserved if you haven't done so, because I know for Parks and Rec, we reserve our standing meeting a whole year in advance.
Yep, we did not do so. Sort of a communications error with Tom Lochtefeld and myself on that, but
yeah. The other room that's nice to use, I think you have to be out by 9 o'clock, but that shouldn't be an issue, is there's what they call the alternate cafeteria in the senior center section.
oh,
yeah, but we should, I've been in meetings in there. That's a nice
Yeah,
space.
It's a nice room and it's quite spacious.
can you record though? Isn't that a requirement that we have a recording ability?
I don't know that it's required. I think the only requirement is the meeting that's public. Now I think there's new rules that the state issued that if you have a hybrid meeting, and I can't remember them off the top of my head, but I know there's certain issues about that, certain protocols.
And hybrid would be set up Zoom so that it captures the talk. I mean,
Oh, yeah, it would be live in both places, in your home and town hall.
Right. I think if you do that, each person who's participating remotely has to be able to log on independently.
Just like we're
So-
doing now.
Yeah, there's just different different rules around it, that I just don't remember off the top of my head.
All right.
Kate Bush had sent them around at one point.
Well, I will go about that and I'll come back to you all. And I do think that'll make our pursuits more interesting next year, which would be good.
Out of paddle season, you can also use the paddle hut. We don't let groups meet there, like the commission, Park and Rec Commission doesn't even meet there during the winter, but out of paddle season, we have meetings there as well, which is quite pleasant.
Yeah, that's a great spot.
So like from April through September, you can use that for meetings.
All right, good. Well, I'll come back to you on that. We'll try to better things. Good. So that's it for me. Tom, it's sort of unofficial to throw it to you, but can I maybe, it's not a Harbormaster's report, but it's an update on the search for a replacement Harbormaster?
I've been staying away. Just kicks and giggles. I did have a need to send an email to the first selectman today. I've been doing the job, just so it gets done, and I had some issues I had to make sure that she was aware of. But so I'm to say I'm missing it is an understatement or an overstatement, but because this is the dead part of the season, but there are some issues that have arisen. So I'm waiting. I'm working those until I can get a replacement actively running.
So I'll ask all of you something. Are we missing something here? Maybe the only suggestions for replacement Harbormaster should be coming from us.
It's a state job.
But nonetheless, where are our civilian, leadership getting their suggestions from? I know we've tossed some names to them, but I'm wondering if this is something we really should be running after harder.
I mean, I'm aware that there are some applications. I know at least one applicant, and actually I was at a different meeting just before this, and somebody who's quite close to the selectman actually checked in with her. This was an hour before the meeting, and said that, they have applications, but they haven't had a chance to take them up yet, so.
How do you apply, how does one get in the queue for this? Just not that I'm wanting to apply myself, but how does it work?
The people
what's
I've talked to and have said, what's the next step? I said you contact the selectman's office.
But is the selectman posting a job on the town site, or is the state posting this job somewhere? Like, how does it?
Didn't get that far. Didn't want to know.
Okay.
I mean, the way I was.
How'd you get the job?
I was standing next to Bob Price in the parking lot at Pear Tree Point Beach when he told me he was retiring, and he looked at me and said, "Do you want the job?" And I said, "Okay." And the next thing I know, I'm standing with Dave Campbell, who was the selectman at the time, congratulating Bob Price on his retirement after 15 years of Harbormaster. And I looked at Dave and said, "Okay, what do I do?" And he goes, "I don't know, talk to Bob about it." And that's what I did.
Yeah, no, there is an application. I believe it's on the town website that has to be completed and submitted.
And Lori, do you have any idea? Like, is there a vetting process or or some qualification that you are, let's just call it semi-local or local knowledge, or could it be someone from, let's say, Cape Cod, or like someone who has? Is there a requirement that you have local knowledge of the waters?
I don't know. I mean, I think.
Yeah, I do know that answer. This is, they want people from town who live in town.
Yep.
And who understand the water.
Got it. That's great.
Which is-
That's terrific to hear. I just wasn't sure if there was, because it was state appointed how that communication worked.
Yeah, it's a fuzzy area when we say state appointed, because we're talking about state waters. But it really is, it's up to the town, because you have to interface with the people in the town.
I mean, Bill, to your point, I think it would be and if you're gonna be reaching out to Monica anyway, I don't know that the commission would want to take a position on a candidate, but in my view, it would certainly be appropriate for the commission to, depend, like, sort of what sort of attributes they think are important, or, what we see as the priorities and kind of, and the issues managing the harbor. I mean, Tom's been terrific that he understands what, the challenges of the harbor are and how that sort of intersects with this commission's work. So I think weighing in on that could certainly be, I mean, it should be, I would think should be considered, but,
No, I agree. And I did so with Jamie. We had a nice talk on how I viewed the role, how the commissioners view the role. And I've seen it, 2 harbor masters in my lifetime here. And so I had a couple comparison points and loved the upgrading that Tom did to the systems and job. And be neat to have that all keep going, more upgrades and, a nice progression. So Jamie was a great ear on that. She really was interested. And that was in her last week of office, and they did have a couple names up and running. But I haven't yet talked to the new selectmen, so I should redouble efforts on that.
Tom, do you know if Monica's a boater or not?
I do not.
Yeah, I saw her at the boat club lobster bait, but that doesn't mean she's a member, because I was there and I'm not a member. So
No, she was politicking there, if you
that's
will.
what I kind of figured. So, she may be someone who's not, necessarily knowledgeable about, the intricacies of.
She and her husband have a house up in Newport and spend a lot of time up there. So my
Used to.
guess is that they're at least, and her husband is actually in the shipping business. So I think they have a certain degree of nautical orientation, but I don't know how much.
Well, it's too bad one of us doesn't want to be a replacement. We'd be a perfect profile candidate.
Okay, I'll do it again. Sorry.
All right.
No, I won't.
Well, I will meet with her, and first things first on the dock applications, but I'll bring up the Harbormaster, and if there's any interesting tidbits, I'll try to relay those to you.
Yeah, I'd reach out even tomorrow and see if you can get on her calendar, because I mean, I already scheduled, and it takes a few weeks to get a slot, just because, as you can imagine, she's drinking out of a fire hose right now.
Right.
And I think she had some conference she was going to, so.
Okay, well,
And Linda, her assistant, Jamie's former assistant, Linda, takes care of the scheduling, and she's chop. She's really
Yeah,
responsive. Yep.
Linda and Karen are excellent.
Yep.
In that environment.
we'll see if they can get me right to the top. Do we have any reports from the clubs that are worth bringing up here? You're in your quiet time now.
Nothing too exciting.
Yeah, nothing too exciting. Membership is up at 759 people, families, which is unbelievably high, but.
Pretty well wrapped up.
How are you guys clearing the kayaks from the racks? Are they disappearing, or is that still slow?
I was down there today. I don't remember seeing. There was one or two kayaks of ours on the boat club, but all of the town ones were empty.
Yeah, I noticed the other day, I saw a town truck going up near water with a trailer and a bunch of kayaks on it. So I think they were collecting the strays.
All right, the town. So is the town like storing them somewhere? I assume they're not just dumping them.
I don't think we dumped them, but after November 1st, we removed them, and I think charged for people to get them back.
Oh, good for you.
Straight to the swap shop.
I don't remember what we do with them. I'll check with Pam. I'm curious.
No,
but-
They're probably behind the maintenance building
Yeah.
down below.
Tom, I had a question with regards to the email that you sent that about the mooring service work that Hank Warwick from Norotan is sort of filling his shoes. Is Hank the mandatory service provider for?
No,
No, so he's
Nope.
just one resource.
yes,
Well, and it's not really Hank, it's Norotan Yacht Club. Hank is just the sort of senior person on it, but it's actually the club. It's not Hank's individual business.
no, I've already had questions from people out there if they wanted to use somebody different in Darien Harbor to take care of their mooring. I said, as long as they follow the town code, that's fine.
Got it. Cool.
Uh,
Well, I appreciate you answering that. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, I have the same problem. It's not the same problem. We're having a meeting with Hank and his team next week with Wind, not next week, week after, I guess, whenever it is. And, you know, again, if I'm still in the quasi role of Harbormaster, one of the things I need to make sure of is that the harbors are being, the coves are being maintained properly. And towards the end of Jeff Ang's career, he really didn't want to go beyond Darien Harbor. So there
Yep.
were two other people involved in that, in the business, and they're both excellent. So I'm trying to make sure that they still have that opportunity if they want it.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, it's an open marketplace. I just didn't know if it was a mandate or not, because
No, absolutely not. The only thing you can't do, which was a regulation that I put in, is you can't do it yourself. It has to be a marine contractor that knows what they're doing.
And we
Got it.
take the marine contractor's word that he is laying out the mooring tackle according to specification.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and remember, there is still a project afoot to review the mooring specifications themselves. And, I know Hank is intending to, what I think is further bolster the specifications, but basically change the way the chain part of the mooring structure interfaces with the bridles and take the chain all the way up. But that's still.
So it
That's-
deteriorates quicker and sits out of the mud.
Yeah.
Sorry?
There is a lot of validity to the way that it was rigged, that Jeff did it for a very specific reason. But there's a reason so many people went away from chain that goes all the way up to the mooring ball, because it rusts and rots and deteriorates quicker. I did spend 15 years on a mooring puller doing mooring work, so I agree.
Well, Grant, you should weigh in on the mooring review process then.
Be happy to, but
Yeah, no, that would be helpful, Grant. Not a lot of people know what's going on at this particular point in time with that project. And when they start to find out about it, I've gotten about 9 calls already about what are they trying to do to, move my mooring in the harbor and Darien Harbor and whatever. And it's like, I keep telling people it's not my job anymore. And but I mean, there are going to be a lot of people that are upset with if any kind of changes, massive changes come across, and we just need to walk
Well, I don't,
carefully.
first of all, I don't think anyone's planning to change mooring locations. That's not, I think, on any agenda I've heard.
I've heard. So,
Well, I don't know who that's from. I'd be interested. You can call me. We can connect offline if you want, but I don't think, other than mooring owners themselves wanting a different location, I don't think there's any.
no, this is not that. But anyway,
Tom,
Okay.
I imagine you're going to be doing a handoff process with this new person, whoever's chosen,
yes,
that may consist of more than several meetings and consultations for a period of time. Can you make sure that we get in there somewhere, that we could have a nice introduction and talk about some of our concerns and maybe
Sure.
be listeners at some of your meetings?
Um, I don't have any problem with that. Again, as long as you're listening in these meetings, because again, the Harbormaster doesn't report to this commission.
Right.
And so you would be in listening mode. But let's see how, long it takes to get settled.
Yeah, I'm asking it when you see the opportunity as a new person's chosen, if we could be part of the process of hearing how you're viewing the transition, how he's viewing it, and then
He or she.
it's fine.
He or she.
Correct.
Well,
Or
it
they.
sounds like if you just hang out in some parking lots and talk about what you're doing, you might speed it along here.
Say that again, David?
I think if you just hang out in some parking lots talking about.
Oh, no.
You might speed it along.
I don't want to do that again.
All right. So we go on to the Shellfish Report and then wrap up.
Sure.
Guys, I need to step away. I got to pick my daughter up at the train. So have a good night and happy Thanksgiving, and glad to be part of this board in the new year.
Great, Tom.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thanks,
And to
Tom.
you, Tom.
See you guys.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Gobble, gobble.
So I don't have too much to say with regards to the shellfish, other than the 2 weeks before November 1st, which was the cutoff date for Roger Freight to have access to Scotts Cove. We drafted the contract. We had CTD approve it, and then I literally ran into Jamie's office the week before Election Day and had her sign it, give it to Roger, and it's all been ratified, and they've been in Scotts Cove to be able to harvest it. My understanding is that there's a significant amount of sort of a brown reddish algae that is covering the seafloor, and he has to take some time to be able to scrape it all off before he can even harvest any of the big cherry stones that are actually there. About 4 weeks ago, I also went with Roger Jr. to reseed certain areas. Unfortunately, we were on the Jenny, so it has a longer draft, so we couldn't get deep into Scotts Cove, but we did release 3 bushels, so that's roughly 4,000 to 5,000 clams in the recreational beds. One near Fish Island, one closer to the Ziegler's area, and one right at the entrance of Ziegler's Cove. Beyond that, I got an email from Tessa Getchus earlier today with regards to the meeting of the Shellfish Commissioners. It's going to be on January 22nd. I'll register for that. If anybody else wants to come with me, I can forward you the information.
That's in person, isn't it?
It is. This time it's in person. It's in New Haven. At the Connecticut Agricultural Experiment Station.
I noted one thing on that agenda.
Is it that it's the University of New Haven, I'm guessing?
I saw something on that agenda. David Carey looked like he was going to talk on some of the funding they have for making oyster grounds more productive. And
That is correct.
Yeah, that perhaps bodes well in our area. I don't know yet what they're planning.
2 weeks ago, a meeting was called between Roger Freight and Tim Pramer, and Tim Pramer was originally going to be able to give up some of the town grounds that Roger claims were his birthright, essentially. And literally, as I showed up, Pramer canceled the meeting 10 minutes before. So at this point, he's holding his grounds. No change on that. Of course, Roger still wants the original grounds that were granted to him or Darien Fisherman, and Joe Warren is going after the old maps, old maps, 200-year-old maps that determine which fishing grounds were actually eligible. And of course, Roger doesn't skip a beat and always tries to, get some sort of partial acceptance from me, which he's just not going to get at this point. Until we know what we're going to do with those grounds, I'm not going to give him any advice one way or another.
Yeah, this has been a constant ask for some years.
Mhm.
Bringing Pramer into the equation is perhaps a very productive twist. If he wants to do something, a commercial transaction with Pramer, perhaps that's his way.
At this point, Roger called me Saturday and said that Tim doesn't want to do anything right now and is holding to his guns. So for now, it's a non-event. And that's really it. They're happy they can go back to Scotts Cove, and because they haven't harvested that in a long time, no one really knows exactly how much or how, the net dollar amount or the number of pounds that they actually extract from that area. It's something that as of now, even Roger can't quantify, and the state doesn't have any records. They figured that the town would have records, and my understanding is we don't.
Hey, Eric, is the red algae there because it hasn't been harvested for the time that he was out of it, or is that because of something else? Just and maybe
I can't tell you positively if it's one or the other. I think it's a combination. It's just that he hasn't been in there since 2018. So there's, like a film of red algae that is covering most of the grounds. The other thing is also his fishing area was reduced by about 20 feet in every direction. So let's say the width of the boat, he doesn't get to reach the areas where he used to be able to fish in 2016 and 2017. So, and I think the outer limits was where it was most productive. So I'm not really sure where he's going now. It's within the 28 acres that he's allowed to go in.
Thanks.
That's it
Thanks,
for me.
Mark. Appreciate it. Does anyone have any other businesses or a motion to discuss anything else? Then I think we're all good. And we will just adjourn if everybody is in agreement. All right, well, we don't meet for 2 months. So February, I forget the exact date. Maybe it's the 22nd. But we'll send an email out on that. And so we've got a couple months off. I think, again, I'll be trying to reconstitute, if you will, an executive committee on this, so to speak, and come forward in the February meeting with some suggested action items for 2022. And I think that would make for a good start, that and an in-person venue. And so here's to a cheerier 2022, and I hope you all have nice holidays in the meantime.
And to you.
Well, thanks. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays, everybody.
You too. Happy holidays, guys.